I think I may owe Gale an apology. Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Leia. Today I'm going to be rereading Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. This is a part of a video series where I'm rereading the original Hunger Games trilogy so that I can read A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping for the first time. I read the original trilogy when I was a teenager. I kind of read the books as the movies were coming out, so it's been quite some time since I have read these books. If you're interested to know my thoughts and feelings on the Hunger Games as well as Catching Fire, I have those two videos up on my channel now. While you're there, you could like them. It's like an option available to you. You could like the video, and you could also subscribe to my channel if you're interested in watching more videos from me. Just as a warning, this is going to be a full spoiler video, so if you have not read Mockingjay, I do not recommend that you watch this video if you don't want to know what happens in this book. Quick refresh, where we left off from Catching Fire was that the Capitol just destroyed District 12, along with a lot of the other districts that have started to rebel against the Capitol, and Katniss woke up from her second Hunger Games in District 13, and she just discovered that Peeta was captured by the Capitol. What I remember from this book is that the Capitol turns Peeta into a Katniss killing machine. I remember that there is a woman. I remember what happens at the end of this book. I think that's basically it. So I'm excited to get started. The reread has been really fun so far. So I read part 1 of Catching Fire. No, I didn't. This is Mockingjay. The beginning of the book is essentially Katniss acclimating to District 13's way of life. District 13 is governed by President Coin. President Coin and Plutarch Heavensbee both want Katniss to be their Mockingjay, which is essentially their symbol of rebellion. Katniss is apprehensive to be their Mockingjay because she is kind of batshit insane. I feel like Katniss at this point has gone through so much trauma and has had absolutely no time to process it, where she is now finally reaching her breaking point a little bit. I think she just is trying to process everything that happens in the game. I think she's grappling with like the guilt of just the sheer amount of people that have died, and she blames herself for a lot of deaths. She's also noticing a lot of similarities between President Coin and President Snow. The reason being just the way that District 13 operates. Coin has a very strict and rigid set of rules in place. Everyone has to wear the same grout fit. They're only rationed a certain amount of food that they can eat per day, and they have to stick to a very strict schedule. And if anyone steps out of line, they are punished. There's also a part in the story where District 13 captures Katniss's prep team from the Capitol and takes them to District 13, and Katniss finds them in a room and discovers that they've been being tortured because they stole a piece of bread. And Katniss is obviously really upset by this, and her and Gale later on in the book actually get into an argument over it, because I feel like Gale villainizes everyone from the Capitol. He views them as these like privileged rich people that have been living lives of luxury on the backs of the poor and working class. And I think he blindly resents them. So I understand why Gale hates them. But at the same time, I feel like Katniss has a bit more of a nuanced perspective because she's actually interacted with people from the Capitol. And I think Katniss also understands that like a lot of propaganda has been shoved down their throats. So they have been manipulated by President Snow. But she has a hard time articulating this argument to Gale. She also struggles with these mixed feelings, but I do think ultimately Katniss sees President Coin's ability to mercilessly torture people for stepping out of line, which once again reminds her of President Snow. And the fact that they just want to use Katniss as this object of propaganda is also very similar to how she was treated in books 1 and 2. And so she's noticing these similarities, but I think Gale fully trusts like President Coin in the movement. This isn't even like a big part of the plot. I just find it fascinating. I love it because I hate Gale. I love when they fight. I want them to keep fighting. Once Katniss agrees to be the Mockingjay, they visit District 8, which has been bombed, and they go to a hospital, and Katniss visits a bunch of citizens at District 8. All the citizens are like super happy to see her because at this point in time, no one really knows if she was alive or not. They also broadcasted that Katniss had a miscarriage. That is such a crazy part in the story. And just the thought of like visiting a group of people that have survived a bombing and they're in a hospital with like extremely limited resources, like they're not doing well, and then you're going around pretending like you had a miscarriage. Like that is crazy. Anyway, what's happening is every time they broadcast a clip of Katniss for the rebellion, then the Capitol posts a clip of Peeta and he like looks like shit. So like the more and more Katniss is like rebelling publicly, the more and more they're like clearly torturing Peeta. And at the very end of part 1, while the Capitol is broadcasting an anti-rebellion broadcast, you can see that Peeta is suffering, like he's in very rough shape. And at the very end, he warns Katniss that she's gonna die tomorrow. That was part 1. It's good so far. It's just very different from how the other 2 books are kind of set up. Anyway, I'm gonna shower and then I'm gonna I would like to try to finish the book today. I don't know if that's too ambitious of a goal, but at the very least, I'm gonna try to finish part 2 and then I'll check back in. Okay, hi. It's the next day. I did finish part 2, but I fell asleep last night pretty shortly afterward. A lot has happened. I'm gonna try my best to keep this concise. So since Peeta warned District 13 that the Capitol was about to bomb them, everyone goes like way deeper underground. As everyone's migrating underground, Katniss cannot find Prim anywhere, and she realizes it's because Prim went back upstairs to find their cat. I already mentioned this when I reviewed the first Hunger Games book, but I just really relate to Prim so much. I completely understand that mindset. She almost didn't make it through the doors as they were closing, and she was like seconds within getting stuck above ground and getting like bombed to death, but she did in fact find their cat Buttercup, and she took Buttercup downstairs. They basically lived there for a few days. When they went back above ground, they wanted Finnick and Katniss to make this proclamation that District 13 was not destroyed and that everyone was still alive so that they could broadcast it to the rest of Panem. However, Katniss at this point has put together that the more she talks shit to the Capitol, the more that they're going to continue to torture Peeta. And so Katniss has a panic attack, they sedate her, and when she wakes up, Haymitch tells her that a team is on their way to the Capitol to do a rescue mission for Peeta and Annie, who is Finnick's lover. Gale volunteered to go within that group, and I'm like, yeah, finally Gale does something noble for once. Okay, he also kept Katniss's family alive while she was at the Hunger Games, but that's besides the point. It was nice of him to go. I'm trying to throw him a bone every once in a while. While they're at the Capitol, Katniss and Finnick do an interview to kind of try to distract from the fact that they're sending people to the Capitol to capture Peeta and Annie. And during Finnick's interview, we find out that President Snow forced him to sell his body to multiple people at the Capitol. He basically threatened him that if he did not sell his body, then he was going to murder someone that Finnick loves. Finnick is kind of known to be like promiscuous, and Katniss feels horrible because she's like, oh my god, I just thought you were a slut. Finnick had also previously mentioned that he would trade secrets for his body. He knows like really egregious like rumors about other people, and so he just started airing that out publicly. The rumor is that the reason that President Snow was able to get his position at such a young age is because he would secretly poison anyone that was in his way. And he would slip poison into their drinks, but to not make it suspicious, he would drink a little bit of the poison himself. And now he has a bunch of sores all over his mouth that like smell really bad. And that's why he wears roses all the time, to cover up the stench of his like gross mouth, which Katniss has confirmed in book 2 that his mouth does smell terrible. A little fun fact we learned about President Snow, which I also did not remember at all. So I'm really curious when I read A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes if that's what it's going to be about. Anyway, the rescue mission was a success. Peeta is back, but the Capitol hijacked his brain and basically conditioned him into thinking that Katniss was an evil person. They would show memories of him and Katniss and then torture him, so he associates Katniss with danger. So immediately when Katniss goes to see him, he tries to strangle her. But as the book progresses, it's getting better and better. Eventually, Peeta can at least be in the same room as Katniss, but he's no longer in love with her. It's making Katniss really emo. To distract herself, she volunteers to go to District 2, because at this point in time, District 2 is the only district that is still on the Capitol side. They're trying to overthrow this like coal mining area known as the Nut. Gale comes up with the idea that they should put explosives on the mountain next to the Nut so that an avalanche crawls in and basically like murders everyone inside. And then there's this whole conversation about like, ethically, should we just murder everyone inside the Nut just to capture it, or should we give them a means to escape? And Gale is team, let's just kill everyone inside. I think it's just further proof that Gale has just such these like extremist views about taking over the Capitol at this point that he isn't questioning the ethics or the morals behind his decision making. Something else that's happening is that he is teaming up with Beatree. So basically what they're doing is they're just coming up with different scenarios that would cause a bunch of humans to migrate to a certain place so that they can trap them there and bomb them, and they're playing off of human empathy. So Beatree came up with the idea of like, just as an example, set a small bomb at a certain area and it could injure and kill a bunch of people. Multiple people would then come closer to the bombing to try to save as many people as possible. Then a bigger bomb will go off and then they can murder a bunch of people. Again, Katniss is kind of like, hey, that's kind of up. I think Katniss and Gale are perpetually getting into these types of arguments, and he doesn't care if like innocent people from District 2 or innocent people from the Capitol get murdered, as long as it means taking over the Capitol. I can't remember what happens. Finnick and Annie get married. Annie is insane. But where I left off was that Katniss has trained to be a foot soldier to be sent to the Capitol. She is in a squad under President Coin's secondary named Briggs. So Briggs is leading her squad along with Gale and then a bunch of other random people. Katniss has a secret plan that once she's in a situation where she can escape, she is going to do so to kill President Snow herself. Where I'm at now, though, is Peeta just showed up to join their squad, and she was told that Peeta was never going to be able to heal enough to actually be able to participate in the war. However, President Coin cleared him to join their squad, and so Katniss is convinced that she's no longer an asset to President Coin, so President Coin kind of sent Peeta along with them to eventually kill Katniss. I'm now going to read part 3. I know that Finnick dies, but I can't remember how. I know that they eventually do overthrow the Capitol, and I know that President Coin allows Katniss to have the killing shot of President Snow, but at the last second, instead of killing President Snow, I know she kills President Coin instead. And I know that Gale eventually bombs the Capitol, and he does so knowing that Prim is there, and he knows that Prim will die, which is why I've hated Gale since day one. Anyway, I'm sure a lot more happens that I'm just not really remembering at this moment, but I'm excited to finish Mockingjay. I know I already said this yesterday, but like for real this time, I'm gonna try to finish this today. So I finished Mockingjay, and I think I may owe Gale an apology. And we'll get to that, but to just bring you up to speed, Basically, PETA joins their team. Katniss talks to Briggs, and Briggs confirms with her that President Coin is in fact probably trying to kill her, because once this war is over, since Katniss is the Mockingjay, she's going to have a lot of influence. And he said outwardly, at the most, Katniss tolerates her. And so if Katniss isn't going to sponsor President Coin, then President Coin's going to want her dead. There's also a bunch of different pods spread out amongst the city within the capital. And if a pod is triggered, some form of atrocity happens that's like very similar to something that would happen in the actual Hunger Games. That could obviously kill them. And so Briggs sets one off, and he gets his legs blown off. And then right before he dies, he tells Katniss not to trust anyone, to just keep moving forward, and to kill PETA. Everyone's confused why Briggs kind of passed the leadership baton onto Katniss. So Katniss lies and says that President Coin assigned her this like special mission to kill President Snow. Everyone knows she's lying. They're like, that didn't happen. President Coin doesn't even like you, but they're all kind of just like playing along with it because they just are standing beside Katniss. The sequence from them being here to getting to President Snow's mansion, I'm not gonna say it's not important, but I feel like it's not really that important. The other thing that happens is Finnick dies. And the thing with Finnick's death is, I remember when I first read this book, I remember his death being a little more emotional. Obviously, it's emotional because he died, but like, I just remember spending some time grieving Finnick, but that does not happen. He dies a horrible death. These like serpentine people that the Capitol created are running after them, and they basically eat Finnick alive. And then Katniss throws a bomb over to Finnick to basically end his life sooner so he's not suffering. And Katniss is like, I can't process this right now because we just have to keep going. And then we just move on. And then we just go to the next adventure. She killed him off like nothing. They eventually split up. Katniss cosplays as a Capitol citizen, so she's got all the weird makeup and hair and outfit. She got the attire from a tiger lady. We don't have time to elaborate. It doesn't matter. And she ends up trying to sneak into President Snow's mansion. And then she sees within the outskirts a bunch of Capitol children being like herded in one area. And then all of a sudden a hovercraft with the Capitol insignia flies above the children and starts dropping all these parachutes. And everyone in this Hunger Games universe knows that the parachutes mean resources. It means food or water or some form of aid to help them. So all the children start reaching up and they start grabbing the parachutes because they think it'll be some form of help. But it's not help, it's just bombs. The parachutes are just bombs. All the children get bombed. All these medics show up and they're trying to like get in there to help the children. And Katniss sees amongst all the medics Prim, and she starts screaming Prim's name, and then Prim looks over at her, and then a bigger bomb explodes, and she just like watches Prim die. So Katniss wakes up in a hospital room in the Capitol. She's insane. Like, she completely cracked. She kind of just like wanders the halls within the mansion, and she eventually stumbles across the room where they're keeping President Snow captive. They have a conversation where President Snow basically says like, I didn't bomb those children. And Katniss is like, you're lying. You're trying to manipulate me one last time. And he's like, no. He's like, you're telling me if I had one hovercraft left over, you think I would waste it bombing innocent children? I kill children for a reason. President Coin did that to make it seem like the Capitol bombed its own people to finally like turn everyone in the Capitol against him. It was completely unnecessary. You guys were winning the war. And then she also kind of starts to think about the fact like, why did my 14-year-old sister get cleared to enter into the front lines of a war? And she thinks that President Coin did it on purpose so that it would break Katniss. Like, another thing President Snow says, he's like, we hated each other so much. We were so focused on defeating each other. We didn't realize that President Coin turned the Capitol against all other districts so that her and District 13 could just like swoop in and just take over. President Snow has a public execution. Obviously, it's being recorded and videotaped across Pan Am. And then Katniss pulls her bow and arrow to shoot him in the heart. But instead, she aims her bow and arrow up into the balcony where President Coin is standing. and she kills her instead. And everyone freaks out, and President Snow also eventually dies. And they don't know if President Snow died because he was laughing so hard that he choked on his blood. He also had this thing where he like kept coughing up blood. So it's like he was on his way out anyway, or if when everyone was like rushing in to go like get Katniss, that like he got crushed with like all the people rushing in. So anyway, he's dead now too. Katniss gets put into solitary confinement. She has no charges against her because her doctor was like, she's crazy. She didn't mean it. She's crazy. Which honestly, she is crazy. She is crazy. She's been through enough. I think she deserves to assassinate a president. So then what happens? Oh, they send her ass back to District 12 and she's just living in her house in the Victor's Village. There is also this moment where Prim's cat comes back, and Katniss and the cat notoriously like hated each other this entire book series, but they finally start being sweet to each other because they're both like together mourning Prim's death. I wasn't doing well, I'm not gonna lie. That was a rough part of the book for me to read. I was bawling my eyes out. Anyway, Peeta eventually joins her and they like fall in love and they live happily ever after. Gale is out of the picture. Oh, this is my apology to Gale. I apologize to Gale because I was so convinced that Gale killed Prim. I thought that Gale was the man pushing the button in the hovercraft to be like, bomb the children, bomb the children. And then when like all the helpers came in to help them, and I thought he knew that Prim was down there, but was so blinded by his like motivation to like win this war that he was like, I'm gonna bomb her too, I don't care. Like I literally thought he directly killed Prim. That's why I've hated him. I've hated him since book 1. Since they first introduced his name, I go, fuck that guy, I know what you do at the end of the book. He doesn't do that. That doesn't happen. Did I make that up? I'm wondering if that's what happens in the movie, and I'm confusing the movie ending with what happens in the book. Like, I swear he kills Prim. I'm gonna watch Mockingjay Part 2 and potentially clear my name.
Was it ours? The bomb? The delayed explosion? The trap? To draw more people in? Is that you?
I don't know.
So Katniss doesn't end up with Gale. Katniss isn't even like really friends with Gale anymore because she can't help but associate his weapon that he created with Beatree with Prim dying. It's just so bleak. And yeah, her and Peeta end up together and yeah, they win the war, but it's like at the cost of so many lives. And it's like, yeah, they defeated the Capitol, but like, was it worth it? I think it was. Overall, I liked the book, even though it was like a huge bummer. I rated it 4.75 stars, and I know that's annoying. I think I just didn't like it quite as much as I did the first and second one. In terms of setting, I was like having a really hard time like picturing where they were and what they were doing. I just feel like her other books were, I think they maybe had like better descriptions. I don't know, I felt like more like immersed into the story, I guess. I still loved it, it was still great. I didn't like it as much as the first and second book, but I do think she ended it really well, even though it's so sad. I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say. So if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. I will be posting a vlog for The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping sometime in the near future. I'll see you next time.